At Lincoln High, students are going through their graduation ceremony, and Rebecca Warner is introduced as the valedictorian. Rebecca goes to the podium to talk about change in the coming years, and afterwards, she takes a picture with the family. Later, Rebecca told her dad, Walter, about going all the way to California for college. He tries to warn her that the boys there are a lot faster than the ones here, but she reassures her parents that she'll be just fine. After Walter leaves, Rebecca heads to the barn for a roll in the hay with Travis, her boyfriend. When he gets a little frisky, she tells him that she's not ready, and he mentions that she's leaving tomorrow. She assures him that nothing will change, and she'll see him every vacation. The next day, Rebecca takes one last look at her room and the farm, and she rides with the family to California. Once she gets to the school, her mother, Connie, pushes them through the crowd, and her brother, Zach, can't believe that he has to help. At this point, Rebecca just wants to get to her room so the family will leave. And once they're there, she meets her new roommate, Carol. Before the family leaves, Walter heads across the hallway in search of a screwdriver, but he enters the room of a young man named Crawl. Walter absolutely hates the idea of Rebecca living across from Crawl, and he rushes back to Rebecca's room. Then, Carol shows up with her girlfriend, Lisa, and Rebecca gets an idea of how much the lifestyle is different here. After Rebecca's family leaves, Crawl starts videoing her before he helps her open her trunk, but his attention span doesn't last long with all the new freshman girls walking around. Rebecca goes to call Travis back home, and she catches him as he's getting ready to go on a date. Later, the dorm is throwing a costume party, but Rebecca is just trying to have a normal evening. She notices that one of the guys that found his way into her room actually broke a wooden horse she brought from home. Fed up, she goes to the phone to call for a ride back home. Crawl stops her from calling home, and he tells her that he has a way to convince her to stay. He brings her back to his room, and he tells her the story of how he used to be a nerd when he first started college, 6 years ago. The next day, Crawl takes her out into the city to show her what she'd be missing out on if she left. He helps her get a new wardrobe and a new hairstyle before going out on the town. Rebecca ends up getting a little lost with the lifestyle change, and she even gets a tattoo before going to the beach. That night, they go to a mud wrestling club, and Crawl lives out his dream of mud wrestling a woman named Thumper. Time goes on, and eventually, Thanksgiving comes around. Rebecca gets a call from Travis, and she seems to not really want to be with him anymore. Rebecca gets the grand idea to bring Crawl home for Thanksgiving. She almost gives her family a heart attack when they see how much she changed. Crawl seems very out of place here, and at one point, he almost ends up walking right into a bullpen. Later, he heads up to Zach's room to see where he'll be sleeping, and Zach makes it very clear that he's not to touch anything. Down in the barn, Travis asks Rebecca what's going on with all the changes and bringing Crawl back. She assures him that Crawl is just a friend. When Travis goes to propose to her, Rebecca gets a little woozy, and Travis tells her to just go take a nap. Back up in Zach's room, he's having trouble with a virus on his computer, and Crawl manages to get rid of it for him. Now Zach realizes that Crawl is actually pretty smart, but they're interrupted when Rebecca kicks Zach out to talk to Crawl about what just happened with Travis. After talking with Crawl about how she needs to just tell Travis that she isn't ready, the two of them head into town to get Crawl some new clothes to fit in. While Crawl is trying on some clothes, Rebecca runs into her old classmate, Tracy. That evening, the family goes to the country club, and Crawl really turns some heads with his outfit. After dinner starts, Travis wastes no time before proposing. Seeing Rebecca nervous, Crawl interrupts the proposal. He says that Rebecca is already engaged to him. No one seems too happy about this news. On their ride home, Rebecca thinks that this is an absolute disaster, but they have no choice but to ride this out for the rest of the week. Once they get home, Connie talks to Rebecca about how she's ruining her life with this choice, and Walter asks Crawl how he plans to support Rebecca. Crawl tells him that he could run a farm like he does, and Walter asks the farmhand, Theo, to show him the ropes tomorrow. First thing in the morning, Crawl gets woken up by Theo, and Theo makes his life hell for a day. At lunch, Connie calls everyone in, and Walter makes it clear that Crawl isn't cut out for this lifestyle. The entire family starts tearing itself apart, and it comes down to Crawl and Rebecca starting to leave before the family decides to calm down. Crawl gets back to work on the farm, and Zach decides to come out and help him. They milk the cow, fix the fence, and feed the pigs. In no time at all, Crawl starts to get the hang of things. And he does well until he decides to hop inside a giant tractor. As the tractor makes its way across the property, he winds up cutting down a lot of the crop that Walter had grown before he parks the tractor by the house. That evening, Crawl sneaks into the bathroom to surprise who he thinks is Rebecca, but it turns out to be Connie instead. After seeing what she has to work with, he tells her that she should wear a little makeup to highlight her canvas. At first, she's a little apprehensive about trying it, but he tells her that he just needs 5 minutes. Downstairs, Walter apologizes for speaking so hastily earlier with Rebecca, and she gives him the respect that he deserves. That evening, Crawl and Connie show up to the hoedown a little later than the others, and Connie surprises Walter with a little bit of makeup and color. Walter isn't sure what to say at first, but after another cowboy shows up to ask her to dance, Walter takes Connie out to the dance floor. She turns the heads of every guy in the barn, and Crawl hangs out with Rebecca. Just then, Travis shows up to apologize, and he offers to throw Crawl a bachelor party. After that, he goes to Tracy at the bar, and he tells her that he needs a favor. After the hoedown, Connie and Walter go home, and Walter Sr. tries to tell him that they need to talk. Walter doesn't want to wait to get with Connie though, and he takes a rain check. When Rebecca and Crawl get back, they thank each other for the awesome week, and they almost kiss until Walter Sr. interrupts them. In the morning, Crawl notices that Walter has his fishing gear on, and he manages to convince him to take him with him. The three men head out to the pond, and Walter teaches Crawl how to fish. When it doesn't work out, Walter Sr. and Walter have an argument about how Walter doesn't listen to him. He points out that how he feels with his dad is exactly how Zach feels when he talks to him. Suddenly, Walter Sr. has a little heart problem across the pond, and Crawl and Walter head over to help him. Crawl goes to give him CPR, and it seems to bring some life back into him. When they get home, Crawl takes Rebecca up to her room, and he tells her that he doesn't want to lie to them anymore. She tells him that she'll tell them the truth, and Crawl goes to look at the farm with Theo. Suddenly, Theo sends Crawl into the turkey pen to pick his own Thanksgiving turkey. The turkey ends up having a heart attack, but when he goes to clean the turkey inside, the turkey comes back to life and wreaks havoc everywhere. Suddenly, Travis shows up and takes Crawl to his bachelor party, where his beer gets spiked. On top of that, Tracy shows up to put on a little show before Crawl passes out on the stage. The next morning, Zach mentions that Crawl never made it to the room last night, and Theo tells Rebecca to check the barn. When she gets out there, she finds Crawl curled up with Tracy in the hay. Rebecca rushes back in the house and tells everyone that the wedding is off as she runs to her room, and Crawl chases after her. He tries to tell her that he has no idea what happened, but she thinks that things are pretty black and white. Crawl turns things around, and he calls her out for only bringing him because she needed a shield from Travis. Back outside, Tracy stumbles to her car, and Travis pulls up. She asks him what happened last night, but he plays it off like he has no idea. He tells her that she was all over Crawl by the end of the night, and he can't believe that she would do this to him. Just then, Rebecca comes out, and Travis goes running after her. Back inside, Zach goes to say his goodbyes to Crawl, and Zach tells him that he's sad there won't be a wedding. Outside, Travis is really trying to get in Rebecca's head. Tracy is on her way back home, but when she finds an empty bottle of pills, she turns around and picks up Crawl. At the house, Travis is back to being part of the family, and they all sit down to eat Thanksgiving lunch. During his toast, he decides to propose to her, but Crawl shows up in the nick of time. Tracy comes inside and sets the record straight, and Theo admits to everything, including his involvement. By the end of the conversation, Theo and Travis are kicked out of the house, and Crawl is welcomed back as the son-in-law that they'll never have. 90s comedies are one of a kind, and it didn't get much better than this time. Pauly Shore gave one of his most memorable performances in Son-in-Law, and now you can see why. And that's a wrap for this recap. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this recap, please subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss a single video.